all of a sudden he got so just straight. Like there was a shift.
Okay, so shift in Holden's, like just personality?
Yeah.
Okay. And so, and you could probably even argue some things that you kind of start to see it even happen before, meeting with Phoebe. But I would say some pretty big scenes that would kind of go along with this is probably going to be the date with Sally. Because you can tell she's certainly kind of getting uncomfortable, with lower your voice, let's run away and go off and all those kinds of things. Then you have the famed Catcher kind of explanation. I don't want to say a speech, but and then the other scene that generally, folks kind of aren't too sure about would be the whole Mr. Antolini. We'll just go Antolini scene, I guess.
What about the FU stuff? You got pretty mad about that.
Yeah, after with the bathroom and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. No, he's clearly not too happy at that point. But really, this is when I think that you talk about him maybe kind of starting to spiral out of control to a certain extent. These would be the scenes where I think that really kind of starts to happen for him. And even after talking with Mr. Antolini, the whole FU thing happening at Phoebe's school, him feeling like he's disappearing and kind of reaching out to Allie for help after he leaves Mr. Antolini's house, all that stuff. So yeah, I don't want to say he necessarily becomes a darker character, but certainly it makes more sense, I think, by the end of the book that this would be a person who is going to some kind of facility outlets to try to get things in order, as opposed to, he seems like a good guy, I just want to hang out with him for a couple hours and be okay in New York City. By the time at the end, I don't really want to hang out with him.
So I made a weird connection that I don't know if is accurate or not, but the part where he is walking, I don't remember where he's walking to, but he keeps he always steps off the curb, every block that he walks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No,
I think that was whenever he's.
You're talking about where he feels like he's falling?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could that be a connection that Allie was his catcher in the rye? Because he keeps stepping off, and then he steps off, he thinks of Allie, and then he steps back on to the side.
What does he mean when he says he wants to be the catcher in the rye? And yeah, I think we can come back to your whole.
He wants to be there for something, right? He wants to.
Okay, so Ben, you said be there for someone.
Yeah.
Maria, you said keep people from growing up.
I thought it was he wanted himself to be saved, so he wanted to save people.
Run that one by me again.
He felt like he needed to be saved, so he would save other people so they could do the favor in return.
Okay, so have more of a symbiotic relationship. If I save people, you can save me. Okay. So I'll put Holden wants to be saved. What if, and this would all still kind of go along in the same line of thinking, I'm just kind of switching words around. What if I use the term preserve? What would be a fill in the blank? Okay, innocence. You kind of take the opposite of what Maria said, where, keep people from growing up, so preserve childhood, youth, something along those lines. So, with the scene now that you're talking about, Kate, with where he feels like he's falling, and that scene happens basically right after he goes to see Mr. Antolini. Oops, I was supposed to highlight that. There we go, something. What's some of the things that Antolini's telling him? I can paraphrase, sort of kind of not verbatim.
He's worried that he's gonna. Well, this kind of sparks the whole Holden feeling he's falling, Angelini says that he's worried that, especially this morning Holden, that he's in for like a great fall, and he's just building up to just spiral and spiral and spiral, and even when he hits rock bottom, he's not going to stop. Just gonna
I thought once he met with his really smart friend, that's what started his spiral.
Well, Luce when he meets with Carl.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
I mean, him getting kicked out of Pennsy was probably.
yeah. I mean, we could go.
Back
I mean, we could go back to all the way to like when Allie's death is kind of when this whole thing kind of begins. The issue that starts to take place with Luce and whatnot, I would say, is there's few times. Well, I mean, it's only 3 days, but there seems to be few times that he actually tries to reach out to someone. That okay, I'm going to actually try to talk to you, because it seems like part of his issues that he has at Pennsy would be, and we said this last week, that there's not a safety net, there's not a group of people that he can kind of talk to, all that kind of stuff. The folks that he does try to talk to within this part of the book, we got Luce, Sally, Phoebe, Antolini. What happens when Sally's first? What happens with his interaction with Sally?
He's like, hey, we should run away together.
Okay, it doesn't really go too well.
Yeah.
Things are okay at the very beginning of the date, seems to be fine, and by the end, she's basically, I don't want to say terrified of him, but kind of worried about what's going on. He goes with Luce, and with Luce, he, in some ways, he tries to act a lot older. And Luce is like, stop being so immature. Just, let's have a conversation. You don't need to be getting into all this, what's going on in my personal life and all that kind of stuff. So he has an inability to really kind of communicate with them. Goes to see Phoebe. Phoebe comes off as maybe like one of the more rational characters in the whole entire book. And she's 10 years old. And even she's getting ticked off at him for, you got kicked out of school again. Daddy's going to kill you. Give me, and she asks some pretty hard questions. What's one thing in the world you like, which leads into this whole thing. What's his first response?
sitting there and talking, right?
He liked that moment.
He liked that moment, but he also goes, I like Allie. And, 10-year-old, you can't say that. That doesn't count. He's not here. There has to be something else. Well, I like sitting here talking with you, and then goes into the whole Catcher in the Rye thing. What does he do with the whole Catcher, like when we said what he wants to be with Catcher in the Rye? He goes through this whole thing, I want to be there, I just want to, be able to catch those kids, keep them from falling off the cliff. And Phoebe's response,
She tells him it's the wrong. Yeah.
you messed that up, you idiot. It's not, be the catcher in the rye. It's, when the Bobby coming through the rye. You messed up the poem, you idiot. And, well, I still want to do that. So any kind of like conversation, and then with Antolini, and we can certainly get into, because, it's an awkward moment that takes place with that. I think Antolini's pretty much trying to be supportive for him. It wouldn't be completely out of the realm of possibility, especially in the 1950s, that you actually would have dinner with your English teacher. You're not going to have dinner with your English teacher. Although I will be at homecoming.
You will?
Yeah, I'll be at homecoming, so there, we can have a slice of pizza.
Yeah.
And then I'll find a table. So
Good times. So the fact that he goes over there, I think to us is like, why would you do that? It wouldn't be completely out of the realm, especially kind of like in a prep school, former teacher, all that kind of stuff. When I always kind of picture, Holden sitting there, and Angelini looks at him, poor kid, and you just kind of pat him on the head, and that's when he wakes up. Holden's, prone to hyperbole and, spazzes out and has a total, meltdown with it. Afterwards, before the whole falling scene, he goes, I might have made more out of it than I should have, kind of thing. But Holden is still very protective about innocence. And so if an adult would deduce something that he would misconstrue that could possibly take that innocence away, he's going to be all upset about it. You think back to Jane's stepfather, it's never explicitly stated, but it is certainly implied, and it was one of the passages that you guys are going to do multiple choice, that that something has happened between the stepfather and Jane, and so he's very concerned about making sure to preserve that childhood innocence. Yet when he has a conversation with Luce, it's anything but preserving childhood innocence. And the poem that he references is anything but preserving childhood innocence. It's you take a look through the poem. Basically, it's girl meeting boyfriend out in the fields away from mom and dad, and it's a very sexual poem that's taking place. And that's what Holden's using as his "I'm going to be the one who catches the people." Now he's not again implying that, but it's a whole misunderstanding that kind of takes place with stuff. I feel like your game was going on for something.
You were I remember him saying that he thought he over exaggerated how the whole situation with Mr. Alien, but at the end of chapter 24, he says when something perverty like that happened that starts sweating like a bastard, that kind of stuff happened to me about 20 times since I was a kid. I can't stand it.
And and you don't and the problem with Holden is he's so unreliable of a narrator that you don't know really what is going on. He also comes across as being homophobic in ways, after this whole conversation with Luce afterwards and whatnot. I was talking, Flitty, when he keeps making that term over and over again, it would be like saying someone's gay today, where that kind of makes him uncomfortable. So is it a inappropriate adult youth relationship that he's talking about? Is it because he takes it as being a homosexual advance? You don't know with him. Description of hairs, I have a million gray hairs. Probably I can always picture he's 2 on one side of the head. You don't know what is truly fact and what is necessarily fiction with him. It's possible, I'm not going to say that no, nothing has happened because we don't know for sure. But it's something with him that you always kind of have to question. And then Ben, get over to you with talking about that scene with the when he's trying to cross the road. Anthony and Ben's right says you're basically in line for a great fall. Something's going to happen. And it's going to be one of those falls that you're not going to be able to really kind of come back from. And it's right after there that he starts doing his walk and he starts to feel like he is falling. And you could say, is it falling in the sense that there's a spiraling out of control, that he doesn't have control over anything anymore and that he is going to his breaking point? Is it where he's concerned about death kind of taking place, where by his great fall? Is it something more of, suicidal tendencies kind of coming to him? I think something to also kind of consider is it's not just that he feels like he's falling, but he feels like he's going to into the pavement? Sink or completely disappear. And I think this disappearing for him would be a huge concern because you go back to what are one of the things that he fears with his relationship with Allie. If he continues to grow and he forgets about Allie, then in some ways Allie kind of disappears. If he disappears going into the street, and again, not that he's physically going to, but kind of emotionally, mentally, there's still then this disconnect that's going to kind of start to take place with Allie. And if he forgets about Allie, he can't be there for him. He can't protect his innocence, his childhood anymore, because he would solely be memory that would be completely lost. And in that way, he becomes extremely tragic. I mean, Holden's in a catch-22 where there's nothing he can do. You can't keep people from growing up. You can't keep yourself from growing up. You can do immature things as long as you want, but you're still going to become 26, 36, 46, 86, all those kinds of things.
I think he's sleep deprived too. This dude slept 3 hours.
Yeah. Oh, there's no perception of time. Yeah.
Well,
and you don't get the sense that even leading up into all the days and months that we don't know about that early to bed, early to rise. It's going to be a good day.
He didn't sleep. He kind of when he was in Ackley's roommate's bed, he didn't sleep.
In Eli's bed.
And then he left, didn't sleep at all until then because he was going to the club and watching all the people in his windows. And he goes, "Oh, I'm not tired." And then he goes for a walk. And then Maurice, I don't know if he slept after he got gut punched.
He did.
He did. But that's the one time he slept.
No, he slept in that guy's room, And then
Probably wasn't a restful
It wasn't a restful
evening
day,
overall.
Yeah, I can't imagine he slept well, even if he did sleep. So he's probably, even if I don't sleep that much, I get a little like. Sometimes.
I mean, he's sleep deprived. He is depressed. He is he's drunk for a little while. So there's not. He's basically unhealthy.
He smokes like 70,000.
Yeah.
Probably can't breathe.
Both in a mental, and a physical way. And anything that, and I think with that, and he sleeps for a little bit in Antoline's house in the apartment, and then wakes up, and also like anytime he goes down to Central Park, hang out the lagoons, take a look at the docks. It's what time of year?
Freezing cold.
It's
January.
December. It's freezing cold. He talks about how he feels like he's going to get pneumonia. Early on, in like page 8 or 9, he makes reference to, getting TB as well, like tuberculosis. And so, there probably is some kind of pneumonia thing that he's also picking up as well. You're sitting here on the park bench, you're worn out, you're tired, shivering. He's not in a good situation by any means. So it's depressing
Yeah.
to follow through with what's going on. Are there any bright spots for him?
Phoebe.
What do you make of Phoebe?
Innocent.
Wiser than
Precocious.
Precocious. Yeah. And roller skate skinny.
her. Oh yeah.
We know that about Phoebe. So kind of a wise beyond her years. Part of me says anyone's going to look wise compared to Holden at this point,
Yeah.
But no, she certainly comes off as being a pretty good kid. I think you can certainly say authentic,
Not a phone.
genuine. Well, she can't be a phony because we've pretty much realized what does it mean to be a phony? Being an adult.
Oh, you like whenever you're in the museum with those kids?
Like happy times for him.
Yeah.
No, he likes the museum again. Kay, you said the carousel scene.
Yes.
Sam, you know how to spell carousel?
Carousel.
I'm impressed.
Thank you.
And yet you couldn't spell picture.
It's
I'm thinking this might be a generational problem so far as understanding the carousel scene. What's Holden afraid of when Phoebe's riding the carousel?
she'll fall off.
She'll fall off. You remember why?
She was grabbing this golden ring.
Anyone know the golden rings on carousels? I can't think of one that still has them. That would, that actively would still have them.
I feel like Connor
Do you have to grab
They
it?
do. Which horse or animals do kids love to go to on the carousel? Think like, one at Kennywood or any kind of big park. The big ones, the horses, but the ones that
Go up and down.
go up and down, up and down. Where do the dads go?
On the side.
I go straight to that little bench thing that sits there, and you got the stuffed animals next to you, you've been dragging around for the last 5 hours, you just want a little bit of a break. The carousels used to have golden rings that would be in the middle. Some would have multiple, some would just have one. They would not be on the moving part. They would be at the center column. And it would kind of be like the 18th hole on mini golf. If you were able to grab the ring, the bell would go off and you would get a free ride. You would be able to keep going all the time. So you're on the horse that's spinning, that's also going up and down. What happens to kids is they're reaching for this ring,
They fall off.
they're falling. How many concussions kids were getting from carousels in the 1920s and 30s, who knows. So it kind of became considered a safety hazard. So I'm sure the one at Kennywood, that like opened in 1929 or whatever. Probably had golden rings at some point, but they're not there anymore. So when he's making the comment that sometimes you have to let them fall, it's actually, yeah, you would, because the little kid would be trying to reach for this ring all the time. He's worried about falling. You know, Antolini's talk that she said about him being ready for a big fall. And Phoebe is not a phony because she is not an adult. He wants to be the catcher in the rye. He wants to keep the kids from falling. Which we would take then, if we're doing this in a math problem, falling, at least in Holden's mind, from the catcher in the rye would equate to growing up. So there does seem to be this kind of realization that's taking place for him at the end, that, you know what, and not that everything has taken care of itself and all problems are solved, but maybe you realize that kids grow up no matter what. What does Holden want to do when he goes on the date with Sally? Wants to run away. What does Holden also comment about wanting to do with running away? Well, with Sally, he says about running off up into New England. We could go, you know, Maine, Vermont, all that stuff. But then, what does he mention as this would be the ideal situation? Who he would live with if he were just able to get out and go away from New York City?
Blind deaf girl, whatever it was. No, a deaf
Oh, yeah.
girl.
Okay, so not blind,
Yeah.
but deaf mute. So if she were deaf mute, he wouldn't have to talk. We could live off by ourselves, be, you know, own little kind of hermit couple, wouldn't have to talk to anyone, wouldn't have to worry about anything. It would be absolutely perfect. Carousel scene, what does Phoebe come with?
Bags.
Because she's ready to go with him. Like, I'll go, you know, no matter what, I'm coming with you. And, you know, thank goodness, Holden actually has a little bit of mature, wait, no, we can't do that. You can't run away with me. You kind of have to stay behind. He actually makes a mature decision for what seems to be like the first time throughout the course of the whole entire book, where you get this idea that, you know what, maybe it's inevitable that she can't stay young forever, that I can't completely preserve innocence in the sense that she's going to be able to stay as a 10-year-old the way that Allie's going to stay as an 11-year-old, the way that Jane is going to stay as like the 15-year-old that only puts her kings in the back row, but that Phoebe actually has to be able to grow up. So you have this little bit of maybe a recognition that it's inevitable the kids are going to grow up, that you can't quite preserve the innocence the way that you would want. So there seems to be, at least then at that point, maybe a little glimmer of hope for him, that he has a better understanding of what's going to happen for people as they mature, as they grow, as they age.
I'm sad I never got resolution with Jane.
He can.
Why?
Because the Jane that he loves and adores no longer exists.
Is that why he doesn't call her up?
Yeah, he likes the Jane that's in his mind. And I mean, it's not to say that they couldn't be friends and, you know, whatnot, but and it's not any fault of Jane. No matter, I would say, if they were to meet, no matter what Jane does, it's not going to live up to his expectations because, stealing a line from another book, you can't recreate the past. Greg Gatsby talked about recreating the past. And that's the Jane that he would always remember, and that's the Jane that he would probably always kind of compare her to. You know, let's play chess. No, we only play checkers. You know, can't we do something else? You know, let alone Monopoly. That would be, how dare you mention that? Because that's the Jane that he always remembers. So I think part of his issue, and I really think him mentioning that wanting to be with a deaf mute girl really kind of highlights it, is it's a communication problem. He is having a difficult time communicating thoughts, feelings, emotions that are going on with him. And the big question that we're going to look at a little bit more so tomorrow is, you know, when it's all said and done, what's Salinger's purpose with having a character like Holden? Because you could come across, I mean, and the book speaks to, has spoken to millions of readers, but you could come, take a look at it and what am I supposed to be able to glean from a kid who, smokes all the time, tries to get drunk all the time, succeeds, can't make a phone call in a booth,
Yeah.
but lets his, kid sister reach for the rings and everything's okay by the end. He's tragic, and people identify with him because of how difficult moments, not the whole entire time span, but how difficult moments of adolescence and growing up can be. I think you can certainly go, I identify with Holden, and that doesn't mean that from, now through senior year of high school, you're going to be sleep deprived, chain smoking cigarettes.
Not chain smoking, sleep deprived was definitely.
Okay. He takes AP physics. But you can still identify with some of the challenges that he faces. But what is, I think if you're an author and you're putting a book together, certainly, you're going for some entertainment value, but there also tends to be an impact and significance that you're trying to communicate to the audience, to the reader. What is Salinger trying to communicate? Is this, teenagers, this is how you should live your life? That sounds like a pretty dangerous message. And I think if you were to do a 180, don't be this guy, well, you're going to turn away a lot of people. Because there are still elements about him that, you kind of like and identify with. So, what is it that he's shooting for? That's what we'll try to figure out.
So first 3 days of this dude's life.
Yeah, and that's important to remember too. That it's a small glimpse. It's not like this is a senior year of high school or
A
junior
lot
year or
happened.
whatnot.
It's 3 days.
This is a bad weekend.
There's a lot done.
How did this make people want to kill other people?
I think that's an excuse. It's like how GTA makes you want to rob bars.
Oh yeah.
When Chapman is on trial, he is his own defense attorney.
Okay.
He rereads Holden saying he wants to be the catcher in the rye. And he goes, basically, I rest my case. That explains it all. No one knows what's going on in his head.
Yeah.
But I think that he believes by killing Lennon, he is preserving Lennon's innocence.
Yeah.
That he thinks he is being the catcher, and I'm going to keep Lennon from. Chapman's a huge Beatles fan growing up. They've broken up. Paul McCartney's gone one direction, who is like the biggest, rock pop star in the world, and a lot of would say he sold himself with materialism rather than making songs that I want to make. I'm going to make songs that sell. Lennon's starting to kind of go that way, and then he pops him.
There we go. Now I know.
Have a good day, Mark.
You too.